Dynamics, being what dynamics is, you could actually take a sharp axe or something like that and chop a man's spine in half, and if you pick up the engram immediately, it would grow together once more. Thank you. Thank you. This is not true. As a matter of fact, dynamic processing is a fairly precise art, but it is still an art. It is something that one does with a full knowledge of the principles and the practice of it. You take a professional auditor, he can go into a case, usually, if we certify him, he's sure better, go into a case rather rapidly and open it up, roll it, get places with it. Sometimes a person who has merely read the book is so afraid of hurting somebody or is practicing tacit contempt to such a degree, or is so slightly conversant with the principles that they were there on the page, but they just weren't quite picked up. I could imagine somebody running 500 or 600 hours and accomplishing relatively little. I have seen a man's life, for instance. This man is incidentally very close to the foundation. I should blush about this. This one gentleman has a wife who is rather afraid of him. And he has some engrams that tell him if he just lost it, he would die. So, as a consequence, he's rather resisting. But he'll lie down on the couch, and she sits there and writes down everything he says. She would even tell him to go back down the time track. First, what he's doing is staying in the present time, running W. When I found out how long they had been at this, I almost passed away. They had done it for 500 hours. What a fantastic waste of time. So, a professional auditor went into the case. Of course, it was sitting around on top of a big grief charge and a terror charge, and 3 or 4 engrams that had to be resolved that were quite painful. And he picked this man up about 4 feet off the couch, knocked pieces of plaster off the ceiling, used up, by the way, we measured grief charges in terms of Kleenexes. There's the... There's the 4 Kleenex charge and the 10 Kleenex charge. And they got a full box off of him. And all of a sudden his tone started to rise and people could start living with him. But we run into these slight difficulties. Right there at the foundation, someone will sneak off and start this pancake auditing. I'm not responsible really for the terms and dynamics. I try to keep it so scholarly and so pure. Once upon a time, engrams were called comonomes. The phrase garbage isn't used much more, but it meant W. But there's W. These are very colloquial terms. You introduce a very fine term, it has several syllables, it rolls nicely on the tongue, one can look at a compass when he says it, and the professional auditors will look at you and they'll say, They'll go off and day after tomorrow you find out that they call chemical assist, they're calling it duck. Here it is, something new in the way of a language, and it has its own, definitely has its own language that's growing up around it. And the language is native to it and comes out of it spontaneously. It isn't something somebody is thinking of. There it is, what do we call it? For instance, you take the word pianola case. Now, what would they use, for instance, to designate a case that was wide open, had psych, recall, physical recall, pain, no pain shutoffs or anything, and you just said, go back to the earliest moment of being unconscious and follow in, you say, go to the beginning of the engram, he goes, and you run it out and he races. Well, they've begun to call this the pianola case because it plays itself. I don't seem to be able to keep these boys as sober as I should. Now, The difference of auditing skill is enormous from person to person. I have seen people around who have just read the book who are darn good auditors. And the worst PA compares to them like light and darkness. It is very interesting, the amount of skill and hammer and practice. There's an awful lot of technology, evidently, which grows up and gets into it completely outside the book. The book works. You can read the book and you can do the auditing of it. And, but there are degrees of how fast and how well. I don't mean to crush anybody here who's working with the book, unless you are content just to sit there and write down what somebody says. You'll get processing done. It's how fast you get it done that counts. Sometimes cases bog down, and the book isn't too adequate on starting up cases again. The first bulletin of the foundation, which released standard procedure, does a little bit more for you. But there's even more can be done on that. Dynamics is very hard to keep pace with. It can be chopped off any 30 days, and it will found to be very much in advance of what it was 30 days before. And each time one chops it off, one says, well, it can't go much better than this, it can't get any better than this, and we can just forget about it now and go on. But then 30 days later, it's altered again. We had to cut off the research department of Elizabeth from the school because the curriculum couldn't be set up accurately. And John would put together a curriculum, beautiful outline. He would give it to the professional auditor instructors, and they would go in and start teaching the students very nicely. And then somebody down in research would nudge him, and they'd say, you know, you heard about this such and such, and you do so and so, you know, and it happens. And first you find out the meanest person in A's life, and you keep finding out the time when this meanest person was the meanest possible to A. And he says, you start running this out, and the first thing you know, you find an ally. Somebody protecting A. Well, this is very smart. And the next thing we know, it's up in the school. And it isn't in John's outlines. So there sit the boys, and they wait patiently for something to be said about how you reach an ally with this new method. And then they tell the instructor that he's been so busy he hasn't had time to read about it. So the chaotic condition of instruction there was such that we had to put out of communication the school and the research department because they were completely upsetting each other continually. Somebody came along one day and started to run early lives on people. I say somebody, it was me. One Sunday morning I was very bored. I hadn't done anything for several hours, and it's been very hectic back east. It's been hectic in Los Angeles. And nevertheless, this was a calm Sunday, and I had heard several times people talk about early lives. So a young chap there, the son of a rather famous author, had been hanging around the foundation for some time. I hadn't found any use for him. So I decided I'd set him up as guinea pig and I'd see if I could go back and find out the time when he lived before the time when he lived, just in straight reverie. So I sent him back to the time when he died last. I said, now, the file clerk will give us the last time you died. Wondering what I would get. And I got a death. Oh my, here he is lying on a field of battle. It's very touching. He's lying on a field of battle, and the horses step on him, and the men-at-arms are screaming around him, and oh, he's having an awful time. He lies there on the floor, and he rolls and rolls, and I was finally got wise to the fact that something was going on here that I had not thought of before. This seemed like a real engram. So I said, the file clerk will now give us the death necessary to resolve the case. And I got a death at 35,000 BC when a saber-toothed tiger was chewing on him. Well, there's something wrong with this because there weren't saber-toothed tigers and men alive simultaneously, according to some of my anthropologists and so forth. And furthermore, the language in the engram reduced as English. And I don't think they were speaking English 35,000 years ago. And we ran to another engram, and we ran that one, and it was supposed to have happened over in Ireland, but it reduced in English too. So I said, now you will come forward to the time when this happened in your own life, and bang, He was right square in a prenatal angiogram, which always before he had been beautifully avoiding, but this time he'd taken the edge of it off. And so he ran out these angiograms. They were valid angiograms, but he put new salad dressing on them, and his imagination had so completely avoided his present life that he'd gone back into antiquity. You know, on the theory, if you get far enough back, you won't hurt. So, here was an early life technique. I don't advise any of you really to use this, because it's very disruptive. I'm not giving it forth here as a valid technique or part of standard procedure, but it got into the school, and we found out that the dub-in is caused by control circuitry, and dub-in cases were very eager to run these early lives. And they would sit around and do nothing but run early lives, early lives, early lives, early lives. And one fellow spent about a week trying to run out the battle with the Persians, I think, at Thermopylae. It was so disruptive that rector training really came down on it. Everybody else came down on it very hard, and we compartmented it too. But it means that the curriculum changes in some respect about every 30 days, because new things keep being found, new data. Now there are many minds working on this. I get an idea and I try to work it out, and the first thing you know, somebody whips it out of my hands and they're processing it down in Tampa, Florida. And then the boys down in Tampa at the school, the university there, they're writing in saying they just found out that if you do so-and-so, it resolves as such and such. That's a good technique. There are lots of minds thinking about this science now, in lots of universities and lots of places, and the data comes back to us rather fast. Usually in the university they started by saying, well, Dianetics can't possibly work after all. Look at the work of Rockford Peoria, wherever it is, and it says clearly that man has a death wish. And how does this agree with Dianetics? Well, we're not interested in how it agrees, we just want something that works, you see. And so, as one physicist from Columbia told me, a doctor of physics over there in the physics department, he said, you know, the trouble with Dianetics is so diabolically accurate. You predict these things and then they happen. He says, what are you doing to the field of psychology? Well, I'm not doing anything to the field of psychology. I can't help it if the mind operates that way. And he comes over and he tells me about this. And he goes back, maybe he learns some new technique. He goes back, and the next thing you know, we're there in a huddle up in the Department of Psychology with the Department of Physics, and then I get a letter. They had just worked out that so-and-so and so-and-so are happening, they're off to the races. Well, I'm trying to keep all these ideas together, trying to keep them coordinated, is one of the biggest jobs that the Foundation has at the present time. They come in an avalanche. And the more people that know how to do this, the more ideas you get, the more refinements you get. There are lots of minds working on this now, some of the finest minds in the United States. I have heard in the past week from a series of names talking about Dianetics and what it could do in the various fields and what they thought it could do. I would dare release here today, just because they are names which make news. There are some of these men who say, yes, use my name all you please, such as Dr. Frederick Schumann, the authority on political science. He wants to take a year off and orient political Dianetics. And he has his application in for sabbatical leave right now in order to start this study. He's being financed by an entirely different group than Dianetics. They are in on it too. And out of this is going to come certainly many refinements in political Dianetics. The Dianetics can do quite a bit. It can cure up psychosomatic illnesses if the body has not reached the point of no return. It can pick up a person's abilities quite markedly. It is interesting to me that our first psychometric data coming out of the validation project, from a week to 10 days of auditing, bad auditing, student auditing, on students, we jumped in that 10 days from 2 to 26 points. This was not my conclusion, nor my testing. These tests were made by Gordon Sullivan, a graduate psychologist. They were supervised by Dr. Ibanez, who studied with Freud and who was a graduate of the Sorbonne. These people walked in on Dianetics, and we were asking for validation, and they decided they would give us heavy battery validation, the kind of validation that can't be disputed. In other words, somebody can come up to me and say, well now, how high will IQ go if we process a person dynamics? And I can tell them, well, it goes pretty high. I've had it go up 50, 60 points in people over a period of 4 or 5 months of processing, and they say, well, where are the records? Because it has to be done in such a way that nobody can dispute it. If somebody won't believe my word about dynamics, or won't believe my case histories, so let's put it into the hands of people whose word can't be disputed. People like Columbia University, or people from the National Rorschach Institute, or medical doctors who have no connection with dynamics, although many medical doctors now do have a connection with dynamics. About 10% of our membership now is medical doctors and psychiatrists. These people are indisputable. That is to say, if they say, I made a test on such and such a date, and made another test at a later date, at such and such a time, on such and such a human being, anybody saying, no, you didn't make this test, would be challenging such an authority or the reputation of Columbia University, for instance. This is the type of validation, then, that we have been doing now for months. Our results on this have got to be thorough. They've got to be indisputable. There are many people who like to say, well, dynamics won't work. Everybody knows you can't do anything with the human mind. So the evidence has to be incontrovertible. And we have been picking up that incontrovertible evidence as fast as possible. As a matter of fact, a little faster than was humanly possible a short time ago. The pressure that we have put on these research and validation projects is enormous. People are working on these things. It's nothing to work 15, 16 hours a day. Hard work. And we have a series, little things keep tripping us up too. We have 20 people that have been selected by a psychiatrist down in Los Angeles, and he hadn't bothered to inquire what their addresses were. And their addresses were from anywhere from Cheyenne, Wyoming to Houston, Texas. And we managed to hold together 10 of these 20. The rest of them went through our hands after about 10 days of processing. Geography came in and selected out about half of that one series. We've still got the other 10. In other words, through this administrational blunder, we were deprived of most of the benefit, or half of the benefit of a research project, which was costing us, by the way, about $10,000. It cost us a lot of money. And yet we're going forward now. We have a planned validation project which will carry forward several years and which will include 3,000 cases. Now we have lots of cases like today. I had asked Dr. Vanya if she would be displeased, and I asked Gordon Salvin, the psychometrist, if he would be displeased if I took the first samplings of some of their psychometry and just selected them willy-nilly out of a stack and had them put together. It's too new. I mean, the cases haven't had enough time. For instance, 1 week of processing in Dynamics is practically nothing, and 1 week of student processing when everybody's doing everything else too, that is not good. It puts a bad strain on Dynamics. And in addition to this, these particular tests, the second one, which was the one to show the improvement, were given to a group of people on the day they were facing a certification board. And they were very badly disturbed people. So the way these things show up is a wonder to me. There's a statement in here from Dr. Barnes as to how they were taken. We have here, I don't know how many cases. These are actual, the psychometric summations. This is a short test. With these, of course, went Rorschach's, TAT, and the medical examinations and so forth. We didn't get as many processed with this as we could have. merely because we couldn't put that heavy a strain on the National Rorschach Institute people that were working there. That takes them quite a while to get a Rorschach. It takes about half a day to get it and a day to evaluate it. If it's going to be a very good Rorschach. Rorschach is a very high order of intelligence test. But so is this one. This is UCLA. UCLA test is the California test of mental maturity. Now that doesn't compare in any degree with the Rorschach, but it's one that shows up very swiftly what is happening. It is very carefully delivered, its pages of testing, and it was devised by Elizabeth T. Sullivan. I understand she's UCLA, I'm not sure. And it gives the profiles here of a number of people just grabbed out of the stack. For instance, I open this up, I find here is these people, by the way, of course we can't use their names, so these people came up before a notary public who gave certification that this was the person, and has signed and notarized each one of these tests that this is a living person, this is the person that the test was administered to. You see how careful we're getting. Now, I just opened this one at random as summary of data. It says, this person is an optometrist. The red graph that's on this test was administered on the 24th of August, and the blue, the second test, the after, was administered only a couple of weeks later on the 8th of September. During that time, they had rather minimal processing, and yet this goes up, this person was processed in Dianetics, and we find that non-language factors rose from 89 to 103. That language factors rose from 147 to 155. And that the total mental factors rose from 124 to 136. That much jump. Now, I'm not going to bore you with psychometry. There are people here, however, who are interested in psychometry. And although these are very far from conclusive, that is to say, here they are, this is not too long after the 8th of September. Here are people who are only processed for a short time. We're still being processed. There are follow-ups on all of these cases. There's a 3 months follow-up and a 6 months follow-up, but I'm not going to make you wait 3 months or 6 months to look at a second series of tests. Further, these are the compilation of the tests. That is to say, these are the certified tests given by Gordon Sullivan, psychometrist. He certifies them as of the 21st of September. This stuff is fresh, brand new. And I'm going to have these tests here at the lecture, the classes, which are going to be held here at the Oakland Municipal Theater. They will be on display there from Tuesday night on to anybody who wants to come in and inspect them closely. And tonight, a young lady will have these two books. I'll be able to put these up on a big bulletin board where you could all stand around and look at them, but frankly, I'm a little afraid they might be hurt or injured in some way, and they're the only copies we have of these tests that are quite valuable to us, because they're the originals. The other, this book test here is the Johnson Temperament Analysis Profile. I'm no psychometrist. Forgive me if I don't talk quite as learnedly about these psychometric tests as possible. I am fascinated right now, as is the research and psychometric section of the Foundation, another organization, not anything to do with this one, back in the East, to discover better and newer tests that will show us where the engrams are and what we have to hit to resolve the case. That's what I'm interested in. And we're doing quite a bit of work on that. We have two people there who are doing nothing but trying to refine Rorschach so that it will hit every time. As a matter of fact, Rorschach is a wonderful test. It will show up a paranoid. Inevitably and invariably, you give a person a paranoid, and we know the engram that causes paranoia. The engram is the against the engram. They're all against me. It causes paranoia. And when we know from a Rorschach that a person's a paranoid, we can then go into the case immediately and look for that engram. They're all against me. We'll find it. Now, perhaps there's one for certain types of schizophrenia, There may be a certain type that causes manic depressives. In other words, there may be a whole catalog here of engram types. That's the type of psychometry we're trying to do. This Johnson temperament profile is a selection showing the processing. For instance, the red graph test was administered here, it says, on the 1st of September, and the blue was administered only on the 8th of September. These were only 7 days apart. Well, because the first and second test occupied a day apiece, that leaves only 6 days processing. And here we find these factors. This, probably can't see these too well, but I'll just explain it to you when you look at them out on the table and you can see what I'm talking about. The test here, the way the psychometrists have figured this one out, the personality graph is supposed to fall in this black area. That's optimum. If it falls into the gray, dark gray area, that's not so good. If it falls into the light gray, that's pretty bad. And if it falls anywhere in the white, that's psychotic. That's awful. Well, now here's the test with 8 days of processing, and it shows that a couple of these points have pulled in to the black, which were in the gray. I have looked these tests over, they're just put in my hands today. Here is a test. Here's one of them here that shows at first, when the thing was first processed, here we had one of its points was in white. In other words, this person was psychotic on the subject. This person was processed for a little bit longer this time, 2.5 weeks. This person was psychotic here, and after processing, that point had pulled in almost into the black. In other words, the person was practically normal on that subject. Here's another one that's very questionable, way out here in the gray, and after processing, it pulled well into the black. In other words, the person became normal on that subject. Here's one that was white, psychotic on this subject, and after processing, that point had pulled into the black. In other words, here was a person who was getting sane with great rapidity. The psychometrists use these tests to demonstrate what happens in the mind. They are the tests used in the universities, and they're very equally administered and very thoroughly authenticated. These tests will be available to those who care to look at them in the lobby as you go out. Then they will be on display here at the municipal theater while I'm giving these classes. Now, I want to tell you a little bit, a very little bit, because I'm running short on time. I was going to tell you about several cases here. I'll just take the last 2 on the list. 2 of these cases were very interesting to me. One of them I heard from about a week ago. No, a little longer than that, about 2 weeks ago. And I received this scrawled note. This is just a testimony. It has no value except human interest value. It says, "My dear Doc, I was looking to see you for a long time, but you never came back. Now maybe you don't even remember me, but when I saw that article in Time magazine, I figured maybe I better write you and thank you for my leg. You remember the day 3 years ago in Hell's Kitchen, when they were going to cut it off, and you used to told them to go to hell. I still got my leg, I feel fine. Hoping you are the same." Blank. There's a lot of satisfaction in this work. Now that's personal satisfaction. I mean, that isn't psychometry. It was one night at 11 o'clock in an ambulance hanging down in Hell's Kitchen in New York. There's been a lot of adventure along the line of this research. Another one is a letter I just received today. I mentioned that it suddenly comes in with a crush on me. A young girl that we will call Dot was back east. She was going to university. She had a love affair, and her lover beat her, and hypnotized her, and then beat her, and then drugged her. This, we found out after a lot of research, what had happened to her. A fantastic thing to happen to a human being. So we had an awfully hard time taking apart. This girl was thoroughly psychotic. All she would say was, "I'm top dog. I'm the top dog around here. I'm in the saddle. Calm down." And she would walk around in a circle of the room, and she would say this again. And then she would scream, and she'd go around in the room, and she'd say this again. She had done that week in and week out for a long, long time. Her husband was a certified public accountant, a very brilliant man. He had no idea what could have happened to her. He knew that she had had several psychotic breaks in the past, that she disassociated very easily. But suddenly one night she had come home in this state. He brought her up to the foundation, and I tried to work the case. I had very little time, and I was only able to work the case for a few hours. And yet I picked out enough out of it so I would take the tension off the case so she wasn't walking around in circles. She would at least sit down and say, "I'm the top dog." And because she was inaccessible, I finally got her to a point where she would say, "Well, I'll do it if you want me to." And I'd say, "Well, all right, I want you to." But she'd say, "She didn't tell me where you wanted me to." "Well, I want you to there. That isn't the right place." She finally got out to a point where she would say these things, in addition to her dramatization, which was some improvement, but not much. He took her away from there because he himself was an auditor, and he wanted to be certified public accountant and an auditor in dynamics. And he wanted to work her, and Commander Price, our psychiatrist in Washington, D.C., of the Washington, D.C. department, Dick Price there worked her for a while. She was at George Washington University Hospital. She was quite noisy. And they put her under very heavy sedation, and that was a terrible thing to do. But they had to. And she became a bit worse. I thought this case hopeless. I couldn't understand what had happened. It was the one big imponderable on the whole record. It was sort of a holdout case, the one nobody could do anything for. The husband took her down to the Virginia Medical Center across the river from Washington, and he asked them down there to give her some treatment. Asked them to do Dianetics on her, if possible, and one of the young interns said, "What else do you think she will have here?" This was a great shock to him, since we hadn't heard that Virginia Medical was on the bandwagon. They took her in there, and I heard nothing more from her. I considered that was completely lost case of Dianetics. And today I got a letter from her. And it says, "Dear Ron, I remember so well you're standing there trying to help me. And I tried to tell you how much it would mean to me to be able to break through. But I couldn't. I haven't been able to for a long time. But I'm all right now, and I've been all right for a month. And they're going to discharge me next week." They broke the case with Dianetics down at Virginia Medical Institute. So that was a big load off my mind. She went home to 2 kids and a husband that loved her. Another case I'll just mention in passing, the longest solid case history that is really a solid, that was witnessed by doctors and psychiatrists and people all over the place. Got a report on her a few days ago. She had a nickname in the field, Lady Lazarus. The medical doctor at her foundation went in and picked up this case at Presbyterian Hospital in New York City. Prognosis, death in 1 month. Weight 80 pounds or 115. Half a weight. He went for 2 hours in Dianetics. He went back a week later and worked for another 2 hours. He spun the central engram. She walked out of the hospital weighing 85 pounds and ambulatory. Her weight came up to 90 pounds. She went into a slight slump. Her psychiatrist, Dr. Monroe in New York City, was quite astounded by all this and started to follow the case rather swiftly, wondering what the devil could happen to this girl because he knew nothing of Dianetics. And he called in consultation on her, and they went over her again. They re-stimulated her pretty badly, and she went into another little slump out of which she came. She undulated along that line for about 2 months. She was well all this time, though, and she was doing well, and her outlook was good. Her case finally stabilized, and that case is still very stable. She is coming up toward clear now, being worked by her husband. That case is getting along just fine. But Presbyterian Hospital and Dr. Monroe have evidently been very close on the heels of this case because I keep getting letters from them every once in a while. We have throughout the country many people on the bandwagon now that we did not have before, such as Dr. Douglas down in Beaumont, Texas. He's running a hospital down there, and he's giving people a very bad time. When any doctor comes in to operate, he says, "Do you know your Dianetics?" And of course, half of these fellows say, I'm a good dietitian. And he gives them a course of indoctrination, very fast, in Dianetic surgery. And he won't let anybody operate down there unless he is. All these doctors are in the process, and he himself is. And he says his mortality rate has dropped markedly since he instituted this. He didn't give me what the figures are. I had to write him and ask him. Dr. Douglas in a hospital, in charge of a hospital there in Beaumont, Texas. I don't know what hospital it is. Maybe the General Hospital or maybe a private hospital. Now, what we're trying to do right now, though, is carry Dianetics well forward of where it has been. A study of man's activities requires more than one mind and one set of hands. Sometimes I feel rather despairing about all this, trying to find people who can run things, people who can do this, but you can turn your back on something and go away. I had a trip scheduled to go to Asia Minor this fall. I was going to go over there for vacation. I was supposed to leave on the 1st of October, and I'm a long way from it. If I don't get there next year, though, I'm going to be very disappointed. Well, our whole battle is to find good men, put in good places, get processing done, make them better, and carry forward something which will make this international picture perhaps a little bit smoother. You may think this is even a little conceited on our part, so we might be able to do something about it. Well, maybe we can't, and maybe we'll fail, but we can at least try. The problem here, I'll answer your questions, is quite acute. I always have a little bit of trouble with this part of the program because there can be so confounded many questions. And some of them are not always of complete interest to everybody present, but maybe just specialized. Now, I will try to answer some of these questions, which I have here. I will give you all a fair show. I'll try to pick them out and look them through, so if you'll just bear with me. This looks like one of the old-time mind reading ads, according to and believe me, it's some mind reading that will have to be done. Now, on some of them, I'm sure. He says in your book, you say that psychotic cases can be treated by any auditory, but recently you have said that such cases should await physicians trained in Dianetics. Has new information made this warning necessary? No, it's not that a terrific warning is necessary, but perhaps at first I may have underestimated some of the slightness that would be given to the data in the book. More important, that is to say, so that it might be possible to make a psychotic worse. I just imagine this to be possible. I don't know many psychotics who have been made worse by this type of auditing, and I certainly would have been the first to hear about them. But there is this possibility. Another thing is the sort of bearing of the hatchet with psychiatry. At first, I kept a rather quite an aplomb about psychiatry and psychoanalysis and so on. I said that, and psychology, I said, I don't think these people are against me. I didn't have an engram to that fact. And I think that they will welcome this as soon as they know about it. And everyone says, oh, get yourself set set for a terrible battle. This is going to be awful. They're going to run you off the face of the earth. You're flying in the teeth of authority and so on. I didn't believe it. And I think I was justified in doing so. It's those psychiatrists who have studied the techniques, and particularly those who have cared to apply them, have become very enthusiastic about Dianetics. We get wires quite regularly back there from some psychiatrist who has just used Dianetics. There was one at Missouri State. They said that Missouri State Institution was very open-minded about Dianetics. Robert Moore Williams, a writer, went in there, talked to the head of it, and the two of them got together on schizophrenia. A young lady who had been insane for quite a while. And they worked her for several sessions, and then one day she lay down on the couch. She was insane, but when she got up off the couch, she was sane. And he said this psychiatrist was no longer open-minded about Dianetics. He knew that he had something new with which to treat his mental patients. And so they started to research on it further, and they started to work with it further. Now, I haven't heard anything about that. That was 2 months ago. About 10% of our membership in the foundation is composed of medical doctors and psychiatrists, but the preponderance being psychiatrists. These gentlemen want to heal people. They want people to be well. Naturally, when some engineer and mathematician suddenly walks up to a man who studied the human mind for 12 years and says, I have the answer. They don't say, well, he studied it for 15. They say, this is impossible, because he's not a specialist, or something of the sort. And I get into an argument that if these gentlemen test it, they go ahead. Therefore, I don't try to sell Dianetics to any of these people, by the way. I don't have to sell Dianetics. I wish sometimes that I didn't have quite as many people interested in it. But the information should be that it would be very good. It's very good medical practice and very good psychiatric practice. When a person is severely ill, a psychiatrist or a doctor who is interested in this case certainly at all times should be consulted about the case. An auditor shouldn't go in just because he knows Dianetics and suddenly steal the case away and make a big show out of it. But this is mainly trying to instill some good manners into the professions. How does one resolve oneself to enter therapy, even when the prospect of being clear is greatly appealing? But when one commences therapy, either as an auditor or pre-clear, one is greatly afraid of all aspects of contacting even the simplest engram. This problem isn't just Dianetics. There is a certain survival value, apparent survival value, in the hypochondriac, for instance, and there is the mental hypochondriac. I'm not using hard words now, I'm just trying to explain. There is a value he feels in being ill. He always has an excuse for his social errors. Now, this is the manifestation of it, but actually down at the bottom of the engram bank somewhere, there's an engram that says, if I lose this, I will die. Or it says, I can't go into it, it's too painful. Or I don't dare change myself, he likes me as I am, etc., etc. There are all kinds of engrammic computations that forbid an engram being touched, or even forbid a case being opened. A skilled auditor can look at one of these cases, listen to the fellow for a few minutes, and hit the engram, bang. After that, the case will roll. Sometimes it takes a lot more than 2 minutes, by the way. I hear this one quite often. If the reacting mind can be influenced so strongly while unconscious, why couldn't the person be put under an anesthetic and told a lot of good things which would drive off all of that engrams? This mind doesn't think. That's the trouble with it. And you're trying to make one engram reason with another engram, and neither one are reasonable. The experiments that actually been done along this line, hypnosis really is that. Hypnosis is some of that. It's trying to put in a good engram to counteract bad engrams, and it doesn't work. Anesthetic hypnosis is wonderful, but not other types. Anesthetic hypnosis can be picked up after the fact. Are alcoholics especially difficult cases? No, they're not. But they certainly are messy sometimes. You know, I'm getting into a lot of trouble for that footnote in the book. No one thinks I drink, so I go to a party and everybody believes me sitting there. Here is another common error here. Modern psychiatry has evidence that children exhibit neuroses before they reach an age where they know the meaning of language. How can you explain this when the child could not know the meaning of the words contained in the engrams? I remind you that the only reason words become active in engrams is because the analytical mind knows what the words are. Engrams are bodies of perceptives. There is a script of perceptives. The words have no meaning in their reactive bank. I thought afterwards it was rather mean of me, but anything for science. I tested a little baby, 3 weeks of age, that I knew had an engram containing a swear word. I remembered this mother having received that engram, that when the baby was born, at 3 weeks, I went over to the crib and I said this swear word to the baby. The baby flinched. And then I said several other words, his nonsense syllables, and said them in the same voice tone, and the baby did not flinch. And I said the swear word again, and the baby flinched. Obviously, the baby was reacting on this word, but it was just reacting on souls. An engram is like a phonograph record. That's all. It doesn't think. And so, as a matter of fact, the dropping of a spoon, if contained in an engram, will reactivate the engram. It doesn't matter what the word is. What is the difference between reverie and light hypnotic trance? There is rather a world of difference between the two, and I wish to caution you that we don't any longer use counting in Elizabeth, because we occasionally induce one of these light hypnotic trances, and they're very bad, and shouldn't be played with. So therefore, we merely tell, reverie is very hard to induce, by the way. All you do is tell a person to close his eyes. And that is not a light hypnotic trance. So if you count to a person who has been hypnotized before by counting, he's liable to go into a hypnotic trance, so avoid it. And by the way, if he says it's a reverie and light hypnotic trance, the difference between, if a person were completely analytically awake, he would be in an optimal state of mind. I think you agree with that. If he had his full analyzer, he would be fully rational, that sort of thing. All right. In Dianetics, we are trying hard to wake people up, not put them to sleep. And that is the difference between hypnosis and Dianetics. They're 180 degrees different. One tries to put people to sleep, and the other tries to wake people up. Please describe an experiment which could be performed by any medical man to demonstrate the existence of reactive memory during anesthesia without room for scientific doubt. This is a very easy experiment. One puts a person under sodium pentothal or some sedation, inflicts some pain just to make sure that he has an anchor point there to go back to, like pressing hard on a person's chest, read some nonsense syllables to him, lets him wake up in the normal course of events, and then puts him in reverie. Some days later, he goes back and picks up the nonsense syllables. He will get them. The best way to do it, so as to prohibit such things as telepathy or whatever between the person who's doing it and somebody else, is to let a couple of doctors install this engram and then let an auditor who wasn't even there and who has no knowledge of it pick it up later. This experiment is very easily done, but I warn you that it's very dangerous. It can be done, but make sure it is done on a person who has full sonic recall. Otherwise, you may have to process him for 20 or 30 hours before you can get that late on his time track in order to pick up the data. That's an installed engram, you understand. And that engram, if it is installed, you have to be able to pick it up. The last time I tried this experiment was in Elizabeth, and sent over to me a young man who had been so treated, and I was supposed to pick up the nonsense syllables. This was a long time ago when Dianetics was very much in question, when validations were few, and so on. And it would have been all right. They read the nonsense syllables all right. But the reading of his blood pressure, respiration, so forth, they mentioned these things. They talked around him. One of them sat on his chest, and they read the nonsense syllables through, and cuffed him in the face. And then they said, well, he's certainly unconscious, isn't he? Yes, he is unconscious. And then they said, well, he won't be able to remember any of this anyway. I don't know why we're being so careful. He'll forget it a long time before he's Elizabeth, even if he could remember it. And this fellow Hubbard won't be able to do a thing with him. Now, because this thing had forgetter in it, the young man came over and sat in the Elizabeth Railroad Station for 9 hours. I couldn't find him. I knew he'd been sent to me, but there he was sitting over in the corner at last. It was 8 o'clock at night. He'd come over in the morning. I picked him up, I took him back to the house, and I worked on him for 18 hours. He was a non-signed case. I had to take brief off the case and bring the fellow up, actually, to some sort of a fair release before I could touch this thing. And I didn't dare let him get out of the house before I picked it up, for the good reason that he was in amnesia. So I picked it up and put it on a record, and I sent it back over to New York. I sent it back over with considerable disgust. And I won't do it again. But with those provisos, that test can be made. Make sure it's a signed case, and don't say anything else but those nonsense syllables. And be sure to inflict a little pain so it's easy to find. Anybody can do that experiment if he is very careful. What are the requirements of being a Dianetic professional? The requirements are to be bright and alert, to have a fair educational background. We would dearly love to have educational backgrounds of psychologists, but we find out that they do not necessarily make the best Dianetic auditors. Do not necessarily. Many times the basic purpose is good, and so on. The best Dianetic auditors to have been writers. Only there aren't very many writers. There's Robert Moore Williams back there in Missouri, so on, there are other fellows around. We have a psychiatrist, Dr. Turner of Huntington, Long Island, is a very, very good auditor. He is magnificent. He's got that cool, calm detachment, so that he was working with paranoid skips, and the paranoid skips, that particular day, had brought a gun with him, and the paranoid skips rolled over and cocked the gun, and Dr. Turner took it out of his hand and put it over on the dresser and told him to go back to the engram. This man is the coolest hand with a psychotic I've ever seen. That's his natural business, and with all of his vast knowledge and experience in psychiatry, that man is invaluable. What makes a good Dianetic auditor is, of course, his own alertness, his ability to think, and so on, rather than based on his educational background. There's a sort of natural aptitude, of course. I'm not going to rattle on here all night with these questions. Will there be another course of lectures here when? Well, the special classes, the 4 lectures there are taking up standard procedure and the latest developments and demonstrations. That will be the course. As far as the professional course is concerned, that requires a month. And there is a professional school now operating down in Los Angeles. We had to keep it operating. I was going to shut it down after I delivered my lectures there, but the pressure of enrollment is such and the demand for professional auditors is still such that 2 schools, one in the east and one in the west, seem to be indicated. So a school is there in Los Angeles. Is it advisable to practice therapy on your own children? If so, what age are they most receptive? Well, I hate to have to cover child Dianetics here with you. A child generally can't be processed very much before he's 8, 9 years of age. However, take one exceptional case, little Joey, he's a junior. He was a fairly easy case at 6 years of age. They could run this little boy he was picking up alertness and so forth. They got birth off the case, and the chronic set of sniffles stopped. And he worked pretty well. He was 6, but that's very unusual. Many people, many children wouldn't be workable perhaps until they were 12, 13, 14, 15. You could, however, do it any child at any age. From 3 on, you could do straight wire, a new technique of direct memory, which occasionally keys out engrams. You can nearly always pick up some grief off a child. They're seldom very badly shut down. You can wait for grief engrams and pick them up. You can certainly better a child. But when you stop and think of some of the things that are in the reactive mind, in the engram bank, and you stop and think taking some little girl, 8 or 9 years of age, and sending her back down a time track to an engram bank, which is left alone to make a psychotic out of her when she's 20, she gets into it, she can't handle it. It's just too much. She doesn't understand it. It's too much emotion, and so on. And therefore, children should not be handled too young. If a child can't handle himself ably in life, he can handle his engrams. Once cleared, can a person record engrams and be influenced by them following future physical unconsciousness? Undoubtedly. We ran a couple of experiments on this, and we found out the person could still receive engrams, but they were sort of on the order of blowing one's nose. I mean, something, they were gone. The real aberrated engrams are those which are very early in the bank, and we try to put in later engrams, and if they have nothing on which to hang, there isn't anything to hold them down. I'm not going to go into this whole long list here. There's an awful lot of questions here. I'll try to answer them all in my next book. And thank you very much. It's been a very, very good audience. Thank you.
welcome to day number 5, or session 5, depending on how you're going through this program. Listen, yesterday we talked about the power and importance of energy in your body. You got a lot of physical energy and have it shunted by investing the energy in emotions that pull you down. Now, we all have times when we get frustrated or overwhelmed or depressed or angry. We also have times when we feel euphoric and joyous and we feel excited about our lives. The secret is not to never feel negative emotion. That's not real. This is not about positive thinking. This is not about denial. It's about the power of using your emotions as action signals. You see, every emotion you've ever felt in your life is really a call to action. And what I'm going to show you in this tape is how to make that happen. Now think about something for a moment. What is more important to you than the way you feel? Is there anything? You know, in my business seminars for years, I've asked people, I said, tell me anything you want in this world. And people say things like, I want more money, I want a better relationship, I want to know that the world has been better because I was here. And invariably, when I ask people, whenever they say, I want these things, or they say, I want to be fed because I've kept them there too long in the session, the bottom line is they'll say, well, if I had some food, I would feel better, or if I made more money, I would feel like I had more power, or more control, or more freedom, or more security, or if I was in a better relationship, I'd feel more love. But in reality, they don't really want the relationship, and they don't want the money, they don't want the food, they just want to feel better. They want to change the way they feel, they want to change the emotional content of their life in that moment. I think it's real important for us that we take a new look at emotions, that we see that some of the emotions that we consider sometimes to be negative, emotions that we think are most painful, may in fact be our best friends. They may be giving us signals that we need to make changes. If we heed these signals, and if we utilize them, we can change the quality of our experience and our life immediately. So just remember, emotions are the ultimate power. They start wars. They cause us to get married. They cause us to get divorced, to create children. They can even make us ill, or they can make us healthy. In essence, the history of your life, the history of this world, is the history of emotion. Emotions are the core that call us to action and change our entire lives. So where do they come from? What's their real purpose? What are some of the most intense emotions that we experience day to day that shape our destiny, and that most of us never really learn to master? And then how can we master them? And how can we utilize those to increase the quality of our life? Those are, in essence, the questions I want us to answer together today. Let's start with a simpler question now. How do you deal with your emotions right now? I'm curious. Because I found that people deal with emotions in one of basically 4 patterns. Either one, they avoid them. They literally try to not feel. They try to not have to feel, let's say, the feeling of rejection. And there's a problem with that. What would you guess it is? Well, yeah, if you're always trying to avoid rejection, you're never going to succeed. Because anything in life that requires you to deal with other human beings on a massive scale, when you're taking a step forward, when you're trying to create change, exposes you to a point where somebody may disagree with you. They may reject you. See, the ultimate fear of rejection keeps people out of relationships. They never get to have the feeling they do want, which is love, or intimacy, or a feeling of connectedness, because their fear of rejection keeps them out of it. So you can't ever avoid completely negative emotions. They're part of life, and they cause us to grow. Some people don't try to avoid emotions. Instead, they go into the I'm going to endure it phase. Or worse, I'll endure it but deny it. Those people usually try and disassociate from their feelings. They try to say, well, it doesn't feel that bad. But meanwhile, they keep stoking the fire inside themselves by thinking about how horrible things are, or how someone's taking advantage of them, or how they do everything right, but things still turn out wrong, and why does it always happen to them? In other words, they never change their internal conversation. They never change their internal focus or their physiology. They keep feeling like that, but they try to pretend like it's not there, deny it or disassociate. And inevitably, this erupts, because the more you don't listen to the messages of your emotions, the more intense they get. They keep hammering on the door louder and louder to try to get through to you. And all of a sudden, you feel worse and worse and worse. Or the third thing I see people do is they use it for competition. You got it bad, let me tell you how bad I feel. It's really going to make your life better. I hear people do it all the time. Yeah, my work's so horrible, let me tell you how terrible things are. You think that's bad, I'll show you terrible. And sure enough, people get in a match to see how bad they can make each other feel about their own lives. You want to stay out of that place. Hopefully you go with the 4th way of dealing with emotions, and that is to learn from them and utilize them. Now, where do they come from? Do they just attack us like a virus, where all of a sudden we feel something? Or as we all know, they come from other people, right? For example, if you feel loving, it's because of what somebody else did. They came over and told you they loved you, or they hugged you, or they touched you a certain way, or they kissed you, and that's what made you feel loved. Is that really true? When somebody touches you and you feel loved, the reality is you feel loved because you choose at that moment to create those feelings within yourself. You allow yourself to have those sensations. You have some rules, some criteria that say when X, Y, Z happens, then I get to feel loved. And then at that moment, when all those criteria are met, somebody hugs you, kisses you, says they love you, etc., you then in your own body create these sensations that you call love. You release those sensations. You put yourself in that physiology at that moment. Conversely, if you feel bad, if you feel angry, if you feel overwhelmed, depressed, frustrated, lonely, all of these emotions are also created by only one person, you. By what you choose to focus on, or to be even more specific, by the meaning that you attach to any experience in life. Let's repeat that so we remember. How you feel at any moment in time is really the result of the meaning that you've given to your experience. In other words, let's say a man opens the door for a woman. How does that woman feel about that? Well, the answer has nothing to do with the actual event, but rather her interpretation of the event, what she chooses to label that event as meaning. Some women feel demeaned by the process. How dare you, you male chauvinist pig? You can imagine how some guys look back and go, what is the matter with her? Because what it meant for him was respect. Or what it meant for him, he was doing it out of appreciation, or love, or just simple caring. See, what we feel is not based on our experience, but again, on our interpretation of our experience. It's the way we represent our experience that determines how we feel. And look again at that word represent. It means, if we spell it out, represent. In other words, something just happened. Now, after it happens, you take it into your five senses, and you make a representation, another presentation of what happened inside your head. The way you represent those events will determine how you feel. So I guess in this case, this woman took the simple act of man opening the door with a smile on his face, and she represented it inside of her head as he's trying to take advantage of me, he's trying to make me less than him, he's trying to dominate me in some way. We must be very careful of the meanings we attach to things, because those meanings basically determine the quality of how we feel in our lives. We must make sure that the emotions we feel are appropriate, that in essence they empower us instead of disempowering us. There are no negative emotions. There are no bad emotions. Every emotion serves us as long as we interpret it in a way that adds a powerful meaning to our life. Something that moves us forward instead of backward. Now let's go a step further. Why don't you just analyze the difference between two emotions for me, just by experiencing them, if you would. Stop for a moment right now, and I want you to think about something that you'd like to happen in the future. And what I'd like you to do is hope that it will happen. Just take a moment, stop for a second, close your eyes if you can. After you're in your car, this is not a very useful exercise. Okay, you might have to hope with your eyes open. I hope you keep your eyes open while you're listening here. But right now, I want you to think of something you want to happen in the future and just hope it will occur. Just hope. Notice how this feels. Now, I want you to notice, do you see like two different possibilities when you hope? I'm curious, do you see it working out, not working out? How does it feel to hope? Now, open your eyes, kind of change your state a little bit, move your body around, change your physiology. And then secondly, I want you to try another emotion. I want you just for a moment to close your eyes and think of this thing you want to happen, but expect it to happen. Put yourself in a state of absolute expectation, where you absolutely expect, you know it will happen. And as you expect this will happen, as you know it will happen, you create that in your body. Right now, I want you to notice how it feels, and also notice how this is different than hope. And imagine you open your eyes, and what was the difference? Now, when I ask people to do this in seminars, one of the first differences that people will tell me is that hope for them, when they hoped, they saw two different examples. They saw it working out, they also saw the possibility of not working out. In other words, they held two different options of what was going to happen in the future. And they didn't feel very certain. When I ask them which one they like better, they always say they like to expect better than they like to hope. In addition, they'll say things like, well, I felt like when I was hoping that I was passive, but when I was expecting, I was active, I felt moved forward, I felt more intensity. So what I begin to hear is the difference in these emotions for a lot of people is the way you represent them. That is, you focus on both possibilities. When you hope, when you expect, you just focus on one possibility. This is what's going to happen, that's all you picture, that's all you notice, that's all you think about. In addition, there's this movement when you expect, this sensation, this tension, but it's a positive tension. All emotions have different components. We will learn how to use those components to intensify our positive emotions and to lessen our negative emotions. Now, I just had to do this exercise for another quick reason. I want to reinforce something. Were you able to hope this thing was going to happen in the future a moment ago? And were you, in fact, able to expect expect it to create that feeling in your body, then once again, I've proven to you that you do control your emotions, don't you? There was no reason to expect it. Nothing I said had changed the content of whether or not you would succeed. I just told you to choose to expect something to work out, and you did it, didn't you? And did it feel better? So remember, you're always in control of how you feel. Nothing in the environment controls you. It's the way you interpret the environment, the meaning you give, the rules you have that determine what positive or negative feelings you give yourself. So why do we have emotions in the first place? What's their purpose? Especially, why do we have these painful emotions? You might say, I know these powerful, positive emotions before because I deserve ecstasy today. Well, I agree with you. You deserve to feel great. And they're a reward system. And some people look at pain as if it were the punishment system. And sometimes it is. When we don't follow our own rules, and we don't live by our own values, by our own life standards, then we certainly give ourselves pain as a way to keep ourselves on track, because we want to avoid pain. But I think negative emotions serve a very powerful, positive purpose. And that purpose I've already alluded to when we started this tape. Negative emotions are a signal that a change is needed. Let's think about this for a moment. When you feel an emotion like fear, an emotion that most people try to avoid at all costs because it's just too painful, or any variant of that emotion like worry or concern or terror, when you feel those emotions are giving you a signal. Rather than just try to avoid the feelings, you should listen for and notice the signal and utilize it. The signal of fear is you must prepare. Well, that's a valuable signal. It's in your body for a reason. It's saying to you that something may be coming in the near future that you better be prepared for. Either prepared to cope with or prepared to deal with. That's valuable information. We don't want to deny that emotion. We don't want to avoid it and pretend it's not there. That's how Niagara happens. That's how people get in trouble, emotionally, physically, financially, in their relationships. They don't want to feel the fear that the relationship's not working out, so they pretend it's still going great. Until one day they find themselves 5 feet from Niagara Falls in a boat with oars and going, oh shoot, it's too late. They take an emotional fall, a relationship fall. Make sure that these emotions serve you. And the way to make them serve you, I think, is to realize that every emotion has a message for you. And what you want to do is not make it wrong, not avoid it, not freak out about it, not make yourself wrong for feeling it, but to do 6 things. Number 1, identify what the emotion is. 2, acknowledge and appreciate the message it's offering you. 3, get incredibly curious about what it's offering you. In other words, how could you use this to make your life better? Is this really what you want? And do you need to change the way you're looking at the world? Do you need to change the way you're acting? Do you need to change the way you're communicating? And then 4, get yourself to feel reassured by seeing that, hey, you've worked this out in the past, you've made it through this war. 5, get yourself certain that you can handle anything like it in the future by rehearsing using this emotion as a tool of empowerment. And 6, take action and change your life. Those 6 tools that I just whipped through real fast are in essence what we're going to learn to utilize, not just in changing how we feel, but using how we feel, even those negative feelings, to make our life better. Now, I want to mention something. In working with people in Date with Destiny seminars, I've learned an incredible amount about human emotion. In order to attend the class, people have filled like 18, 19, 20-page questionnaires, it turns out to be for most people, describing every emotion that you feel in your life and what triggers it. What do you value most about each of those situations? If there's any one thing I've learned by going through all of these forms, is that human beings seem to have unlimited ways of describing negative emotions. I get to read about how people get to be frustrated and insecure and lonely and bored and sad and angry and impatient and annoyed and anxious and unsure and guilty and unworthy and depressed and disrespected and humiliated. Can you believe I do this for a living? But the good side is this, I get to also read about how they get to have joy, love, success, abundance, contribution, flexibility, creativity, power, impact, curiosity, wonder, beauty, spirituality, respect, sincerity, integrity, kindness, confidence, ecstasy, you name it. We have lots of pleasure we can have in our lives too. The challenge is that most people, though, spend more time in the negative. They spend more time trying to avoid those negative emotions instead of using them. So what I try to do is to sit down and say, okay, there are all these different ways of describing emotion. The question is, do enough of them fall into a group of categories that we can chunk them down? In other words, you might say, well, I'm really feeling concerned or worried or anxious or scared or terrified. Well, they're really all forms of fear, right? So what I'd like to do in this session, at least just for the sake of our conversation and for our ability to deal with our emotions, is to take and create a model for each other. A model that I've created where basically I fit all emotions into 10 categories. Now the challenge with this is we all have different labels for what a feeling means. So yours may not agree with the ones I'm putting down, but just for our ability to have a conversation and for our ability to deal with our emotions, we're going to say there are 10 types of emotions, just for the sake of conversation. Is that okay with you? I hear yes, I just hallucinate. That's another kind of emotion, I guess. But here are the 10 emotions, and I'd like you to jot them down. Now I know if you're driving your car, it makes it a little more difficult. But if you can, take out your get-together journal, and let's write down these 10 emotions. I'll wait for one moment. Moment's up. Welcome back. Here are the 10 categories of emotions. Here's the first one. Uncomfortable emotions. It's a pretty big category. You're right. But I'm basically describing emotions that don't have a tremendous amount of intensity, but they bug you, they bother you. Feelings of boredom, for example, or being impatient, or uneasy, or distressed, or maybe mildly embarrassed, would probably fit under uncomfortable for most people. The second category of emotions would be the emotions of fear. Those could be things like concern, apprehension, worry, anxiety, feeling scared, or even terrified. These are all different types of emotions that we're going to relate, for the sake of our conversation, to fear. The third category of emotion I call hurt. Any kind of feeling we would link to hurt. And we're going to talk about how most of our feelings of hurt. Fourth category, anger. And anger, again, has a large variety. Everything from mildly irritated, to angry, to livid, to resentful, to furious, to enraged. Anything in that category we're going to talk about as an anger emotion. Fifthly, emotions of frustration. These are any emotions you would link to being held back or hindered in your pursuit of something. Sixth, emotions of disappointment. Anything that makes you really sad or defeated as a result of something you expected that didn't work out well. 7, guilt emotions. Maybe another way of describing them would be the emotions of regret. Number 8, feelings of inadequacy. Any emotion you've ever experienced you would consider causing you to feel like you're less than or unworthy would fit in this category we call inadequate. Number 9, feelings of being overloaded. Now again, overloaded I'm using to make it soft, but most emotions should probably link in here would be feelings of being overwhelmed or even hopeless or depressed. Anything that makes you feel like there's more than you can possibly deal with would fit in the overloaded category of emotion. Now lastly, number 10, lonely emotions. Anything that makes you feel all alone, like you're lonely, like you're apart from or separate from, would fit in this category. So again, the 10 are 1, uncomfortable feelings, 2, any feelings of fear, 3, any feelings of hurt, 4, any feelings of anger, 5, any feelings of frustration, 6, any feelings you would link to disappointment, 7, the category of guilt and regret, 8, feelings of inadequacy, 9, feelings of overload, overwhelmed, hopelessness, or depression, and 10, any feelings you link to loneliness. Okay, it's a big set of categories, but here's why I've done this. I want to train you and myself. I just started to use this technique for myself because I just came up with it. It's pretty fantastic. I've enjoyed it. I do say so myself. I'm quite humble. Really, it's really fantastic. I have a good time with it, and I hope you will as well. All of these emotions, these categories of emotions, are there for a reason, and they're to give us a message that something needs to change. Now, one or two things has got to be changed when we're feeling any of these emotions. And before I tell you this, let's make sure you're enrolled here. How would you feel in your life if you knew, no matter what emotion you felt, you could go, okay, am I feeling uncomfortable, or is that a feeling of fear, or is that a hurt feeling, or an anger type of feeling, or a frustrated type of feeling, or disappointed, or guilty, or inadequate, or overloaded, or lonely feeling? How would you feel if you knew that in a moment or two, you could instantly get out of that feeling, no matter how intense it had been? Would that be useful? Then stick with me, okay? Because I know this may seem a little bit cumbersome at first. Listen to me carefully. At any moment you feel any emotion, the first step you're going to always want to take to master your emotions, I mentioned earlier, I say it to you again, first step always will be to identify the signal. What I mean by identify the signal is figure out, if you're having a feeling, which one of these categories does it go into? So let's take a look at how this might work. Let's say something happens between you and a loved one, and as a result you feel rejected. You look at your list of 10 here and you say, rejected is not on here, Tony. Well, step number 1 is identify which category most fits. Well, when you feel rejected, you really can feel a lot of things about that rejection. You might feel uncomfortable, you might feel actually hurt, or you might feel angry about it, or as a result of rejection, you might feel lonely. What I'm trying to do is get down to the core emotion that really is controlling you. rather than just this giant word called rejection, which really isn't the essence of what you're feeling. As you go around, you look through your list, and by the way, I know you're not good at this list yet because it's brand new, but you'll memorize it simply by listening to this tape over and over again. What we're going to call them from now on is action signals, because that's exactly what they do. They are signals for you to take action, to reevaluate the way you're perceiving something, or the way you're perceiving, the way you're communicating your feelings to other people, or the way you're behaving around other people or situations. In other words, they're going to tell us we got to make a change in order to get what we really want. And that's what these action signals are all about. They're not negative, they're not bad, they're there to serve us. But for now, let's come back to the exam. We said step number one, that always is identify the signal. That simply means where does it fit in here? So in this example, we said that rejection really was just uncomfortable for you. Maybe what happened is you turned to kiss your husband or wife and they were busy reading or writing or something and they didn't really reciprocate. You felt, kind of uncomfortable about it. You didn't feel lonely, you didn't feel hurt, you didn't feel angry, you just felt a little uncomfortable. The signal of being uncomfortable is calling to your attention a message. And the message of uncomfortable feelings is, one, realize you need to change your state. But right now, no matter what happens in the state you're in, you're not going to appreciate it. You're not going to be resourceful in understanding what things really mean. Say, for example, you're feeling in a state of being uncomfortable about that, you're going to start hallucinating. Well, gosh, my husband or wife, they weren't really loving to me. Does that mean that they're not interested in me anymore? Does that mean that, that our relationship's not as strong? We tend to hallucinate when we get in an unresourceful state. So when you feel uncomfortable, first message from that signal is, hey, change your state. Second, clarify what you want. Immediately, you got to clarify what you want. That's what the signal's trying to tell you. It says, yeah, don't just be uncomfortable. What do you want? If you want your husband or wife to be closer to you, get clear that's what you want. And step three, immediately take action in that direction. And the way to take action in that direction is communicate your desire or do something that expresses it. Make sure you do something until you achieve what you want and you're no longer uncomfortable. It's literally that simple. Don't just sit around and go, gosh, I feel bored. I feel foolish. I feel insecure. I feel kind of rejected. I feel uncomfortable. Say, great. I need to change my state. The fact that I'm uncomfortable is a signal. It's giving me a message to immediately change my state. 2, clarify what I want. 3, take action in that direction. If you do that, you conquer this emotion immediately. Let's say you felt rejected to the point where you called it hurt. You really felt hurt inside. Well, what's the message of hurt? When you feel the sensation you call hurt feelings, that signal's giving you a different message. And the message there is that there's an expectation you have that has not been met, and you have a sense of loss. That's why it's more intense than just being uncomfortable. Feel like you've actually lost something. Now the challenge with this, as with all these emotions, is that when you identify the message, you must immediately clarify what has to be changed. I mentioned this twice on the tape in passing, but I want you to hear this right now. Whenever you have what you used to call a negative emotion, you're now going to call an action signal. You know that action signal is signaling you need to change one of 2 things. Either your perception or your procedure. Now let me clarify what I mean by that. Your perception might be, for example, that gosh, you feel hurt. You feel like your husband doesn't love you so much anymore. Your wife doesn't love you so much anymore because, gosh, when you first met, boy, all you had to do was, look at them and they dropped a newspaper and came over and hugged you. Now they don't get a sense of loss and that hurts you inside. And that hurt is a lot more painful than the feelings of just being uncomfortable. The point though is this. Is this an appropriate emotion for you to feel based on this situation and this time with this person? Ask ourselves whenever we have an emotion. We know that we have that signal. We need to first identify it, and then secondly, immediately appreciate the signal's offering us a message. And the message is we need to change. Again, our perception or our procedure. So our perception might be, person doesn't love me. Do we need to change our perception? Do we have some rules that are inappropriate in this situation? And the answer here probably is yes. Wouldn't you agree? This person is just wrapped up in what they're doing because they're just immersed. It doesn't mean they love you any less. What this emotion is telling you is you need to change your perception because otherwise you're going to feel pain for no reason. You might also look at the same situation as a symbol that you need to change your procedure. Procedure means the way you're proceeding with this information. In other words, what this may be is a signal to you that you are communicating your own needs to your husband or your wife. Maybe what you need to do is change your procedure, and instead of feeling hurt, or instead of feeling uncomfortable, turn to your husband or wife and say, honey, I know you're wrapped up in your work, I know you're totally immersed, I know you're trying to do stuff that supports the whole family here, you know, I just need, 3 minutes with just you and I, because I really need right now to just feel loved by you. I need to hold you. I need to feel connected to you. Now, if that person starts to get upset, obviously you're getting feedback that your procedure still didn't work. You have to be a little more flexible, a little more creative, or maybe a little bit more loving in the way you do it. Or maybe change the timing in which you go about something. But that's changing procedure, changing the way you communicate. Or another way of changing procedure might be it's a signal that says that the way you're communicating your husband or wife doesn't make them want to make you feel loved right. Behavior may be turning them off. For example, let's say you feel rejected by them because when you come in the door, they don't rush up and give you a hug. They're immersed in something. And how do you respond to that? Well, what a lot of people do when they feel rejected is they feel uncomfortable with it, or they feel hurt, or some people get angry when they feel rejected. Now, what's the message of anger? The message of anger is you have a standard for your life, something that's important to you and it's not being met by another person, or maybe even not being met by you. Sometimes we get angry because we're not living our own standards, huh? So let's say as a result, one of your standards is that people who love you, they run up and they greet you when you're home. They don't do that today. You feel angry. One of your standards has been violated. Something you believe important is not happening, and now you're angry about it. How do you respond now to your spouse who doesn't even know what's going on? Maybe you give them a dirty look, or maybe you make some snide remark, or you find something wrong with what they're doing. As a result, this person may very well purposely reject you. Now when you're feeling this rejection, you're feeling this hurt or this anger, and you say, okay, this anger means I have a message here, a signal. Signals I need to change either my perception or my procedure. Maybe you don't need to change your perception. Maybe they really are rejecting you deliberately. Maybe the procedure is not only how you communicate, but how you're behaving. Maybe you need to look and say, I'm not treating this person in a very loving way. No wonder they're giving me this feedback. I need to change me. Are you following me so far? So we're always getting the message. We're identifying the signal. We're appreciating the message and knowing the message is telling us we either need to change our perception or our procedure. The way we're communicating, the way we're behaving. I know this may sound complex at first, but I have to clean this tape back and listen to this little section a couple of times. You'll get this down. I want to change either my perception or my procedure, the way I'm communicating to this person or the way I'm behaving, or just the way I'm looking at the whole darn thing, and make it so I don't have pain. I need to look at things, communicate, or behave in a new way. That's the message of pain. Let me say that again, because I think you'll get this one. If you're feeling pain, it's a message. You need to change the way you're looking at things, and therefore what they mean to you. Or change the way you're communicating your desires and needs to someone, especially if the pain involves somebody else. Or change the way you're behaving, the way you're treating others, and that'll get you a new response. That's in essence the basis of all these action messages. They're telling you, got to set a new outcome and move in a new direction. Otherwise, you're going to stay in pain. And by the way, let me mention something to you. If you ignore a message, if you ignore one of these signals, and these action signals, whether it be the signal of feeling hurt or fearful or angry or frustrated or disappointed or overloaded, that signal doesn't go away, it intensifies. You'll feel even more hurt, even more angry. It intensifies until one day you get smart enough to say, hey, I gotta change something here. I gotta change my expectations, the way I'm evaluating this thing, the way I'm looking at things, the way I'm feeling about it, or the way I'm communicating what I need, or I gotta change the way I'm behaving, period. I'm gonna keep feeling this until I make one of those 3 changes. It's that simple. Next, once you've identified the signal, i.e. you've identified you said I was feeling rejected, and what that really means is I'm feeling uncomfortable, or it really means I'm feeling hurt, or angry, or lonely, or whatever. And the second step is appreciate the message. Respect that emotion. Don't make your emotion wrong. So many times we say, well, I don't want to feel rejected, or I don't want to feel bad, or I don't feel angry, I don't want to feel hurt. Don't do that. Appreciate it. It has a message for you. It means you got to change. But it also means something very specific depending upon which emotion these tend. So before we go any further, let me review with you what the messages are that each one of these 10 signals is giving you. We've already said that if you're uncomfortable, the message is simple. You got to change your state, clarify what you want, and take action in the direction of what you want. And immediately you won't be uncomfortable anymore. If you're feeling category number 2, emotions of fear, whether it be concern or apprehension or worry or anxiety or scared or frightened or terrified, no matter what intensity it is, any one of those still are fearful emotions, and fear emotions deliver one message to us. We need to prepare ourselves to deal with something or to avoid the negative consequences of something that's coming up, something that's about to happen, a situation or an event. Basically, fear is get prepared. Get yourself so you can deal with something. And that's a valuable message, isn't it? Now, the problem is what most of us do is we get fearful, and we don't take the message. We either try to deny the fear and act like we're real strong, and all it does is get stronger and stronger. Or worse, we just surrender to the fear and we don't get the message. All we do is we get caught up in the emotion, and we get more and more scared, and we amplify it. And we start thinking of the worst that can happen rather than figuring out, okay, what do I need to do to be prepared to avoid the negative consequences and make this work? For example, people have fear of failure. That's a valuable fear. It's saying get prepared so you won't fail. You might have a fear because the IRS is coming to visit you and you get a little note in the mail. You get this feeling of anxiety. That's probably a useful fear. It's probably saying to you, hey, you better go get all your paperwork in order. If you didn't have that message, it wasn't painful enough, you might slough it off. It might show up and it may cost you a lot of money, not because you weren't accurate or honest, because you weren't prepared. Same thing happens if somebody asks you to give a speech and you have a little fear inside. Maybe it grows into anxiety. The more intense it gets, the more we tend to surrender to the emotion rather than get the message. That's why we may want to convert fear and say, well, I'm a little concerned. What I'm concerned about is I need to prepare for this speech so I do the best possible job and I'll feel confident instead of fearful. Now, again, with each of these emotions, we want to hear the message and see if the message is appropriate. You may already be prepared. You may be as prepared as you can get. There's a limit to what you can do, right? There's a point where you have to have some faith. At that point, you might just have to say, you know what? This is a message I need to change my perceptions, not my procedures. I'm prepared by my procedures. I know what to do. I know how to do it. But I got to stop focusing on this thing being the worst possible situation. I just need to decide to become confident now, to focus on it working instead of it not working. The third category of emotions, those of hurt feelings, give us a signal and a message that says you have an expectation that's not been met and you have a feeling of loss. I.e., you expected somebody to keep their word and they didn't, that hurt your feelings. Or you expected someone never to share something that you told them privately and they told somebody else. And now you feel hurt. You feel a sense of loss of intimacy with them or loss of trust. And that sense of loss is what creates that feeling of hurt inside of us. What do we need to do? It tells us immediately, we have to evaluate, is there really a loss here? Again, do we need to change our perception? Maybe you just didn't communicate to this person that when you told them this, you wanted to keep this information private. Maybe you haven't lost anything. Maybe you just have to change your way of communicating your needs, or again, change your behavior. The next category is anger. That's the fourth category. And again, emotions like irritation, or feeling livid, or furious, or enraged, or resentful, all of these fit into this category. Any of these emotions are simply signals giving you a message, and the message here is that an important rule that you have in your life has been violated by someone else, or maybe even by you. See, when we think something's really important and somebody violates that rule, we get upset about it. How we deal with that upset will determine a great deal how much pain or pleasure we really experience in our lives, and how close we get to other people, and how much we push them away from us. In other words, if somebody violates your standards, that's the message. What you're supposed to do with that message is real simple. Communicate that you have a standard. Communicate that you know it's only your rule. It isn't necessarily their rule, but you need their help. So if we use the earlier example where you shared something in confidence with someone, but you didn't tell them it was in confidence, you expected them to know that, and you didn't just feel hurt, you felt angry about it. And the bottom line is, instead of beating that person up, you need to go to that person and communicate in a different way. Right? Change the way you're communicating, change your procedure. And say, you know, I know you didn't understand this to be private, but this is really important to me. You need to deal with it as quickly as possible. Anger is usually an outgrowth of hurt. In other words, when you're hurt, you have a feeling of loss. Something you expected didn't work out. When you're angry, it's because it's something you think is really important that wasn't handled, or you've got a lot of hurts that have built up and you've not expressed them, you've not communicated them. So anger is usually a signal that something you believe is really important has been violated by someone or yourself, or that you have a lot of hurts that you've not expressed that have built up until anger. How do you deal with it? Change your perception. Maybe this person wasn't trying to hurt you at all. Change your procedure. Communicate better what your real needs are, or change your behavior. Tell people up front, hey, this is private. Promise me you won't share this with anybody because it's real important to me. Either way, you'll get out of your anger quickly. It's simply a signal that says you need to clarify with the people what your rules are and get them to agree to meet them, or you need to compromise them possibly. You know, some things you get angry about, you're going to get angry about for the rest of your life. And you better identify those things and realize that those are just your standards. They're not everybody's standards. And if you go around being upset because everyone doesn't live by your rules, you're going to be upset your whole life. So again, maybe you need to change your perceptions, change your rules, so the life is a lot simpler, a lot less painful for you. The fifth category of emotions, frustration. These action signals are telling you you need to change your approach to achieving your goal. Whatever you're going after, you're not going to get it the way you're doing it right now. That's why you're frustrated. You keep trying to get the same result by doing the same thing over and over again. There was a definition given a long time ago about insanity. It's an insanity is attempting to get a new result by doing the same thing over and over again. It'll never work. So you've got to change your approach. When you feel frustrated, just know, hey, that's a message. I've got to change my approach. I need to be more flexible in the situation. Category number 6, disappointment. If you start to feel disappointed, that's a signal. And that signal is bringing you a message. And the message is that you need to realize an expectation you have, an outcome you're going after, is not going to probably happen unless you change your expectation and make it more appropriate for the situation at hand. In other words, maybe you wanted something to happen in too short a period of time. I was doing a seminar about a week ago, and I was in Fort Lauderdale. And I was in the restroom, and this man recognized me and came up to me. It's always interesting when you're in a restroom and people come up and ask you for advice about how to change their life. It seems a little inappropriate. But anyway, the bottom line is, it made me uncomfortable, actually. And I guess I had to clarify that I needed to change my state, clarify what I wanted, and take some new action, which I did right then and there. I won't give you the details. But the bottom line is, this man told me, he said, gosh, I hope you could help me turn my whole life around. He said, because I've been doing everything I know. I've been listening to every tape there is, I read every book, and I've been doing it all, and nothing seems to be working. He said, I feel like I'm so disappointed. I did everything what he said, and my life still isn't working out. He said, I just feel like I just could take my life. And I said, well, you want some help? And I didn't say that harshly. I did it to break the guy's pattern. He looked at me like I was crazy, and then he saw me smiling. He kind of, his brain fried for a moment there, and he saw that he was being ridiculous, and so was I. And so he said, well, I said, listen. I said, what you need to realize is that the reason you're disappointed is you're getting feedback. Disappointment says that you set some pretty strong goals within a certain time frame, and you didn't meet those. So you got to change your goal a little bit. You got to make it more appropriate for where you are right now. Make it a little more realistic for where you are right now. I said, remember something. God's delays are not God's denials. See, you may just be in what I call lag time. Lag time means if you go out right now, you plant a seed, you don't come back the next day and look for the plant. You don't expect to also reap your reward the next day. See, you planted a seed, and then you ran back the next day and went to the soil and you said, hey, soil, where's my plant? Soil will just giggle at you and say, well, you knew? It doesn't work that way. You got to work through all the different seasons and stuff. How can you be disappointed already? But some people manage to do that. I said, so you need to be in lag time. Sometimes you put a seed in, you plant something, and it takes a season for you to get the reward. And you're still in springtime, and you're expecting it to be fall. Realize, disappointment says you need to change your expectations. You need to change simply your view of things and come up with a more appropriate outcome for the time that you have involved, the people you have involved, the situation you have involved. So that's the message. Listen to it. Utilize it. Don't keep re-experiencing disappointment and stacking it until you feel overloaded or overwhelmed or hopeless or inadequate, which our emotions we'll talk about later. But first, let's talk about the next one. The 7th major category of emotions are guilt or regret emotions. Hey, when you've got feelings of guilt or regret, a lot of people say, well, don't feel guilty about anything. Garbage. Guilt serves you if you hear the message. And the message of guilt is really simple. It says you violated one of your own standards, and you must do something immediately to ensure that you're not going to violate again in the future. That's why you have the pain of guilt. Now, what most people do is they do one or the other. They either deny the guilt, take themselves out of it, and don't feel guilty at all, which, I agree you shouldn't stay in guilt, but if you just deny the guilt and don't get the message, the guilt's going to come back. It'll get you sooner or later. It's back there. It's deep. It's dark. It'll get you. So with that fear, maybe you should turn that fear into getting the message instead of being overwhelmed and again surrendering to guilt. That's the other extreme. People just walk around and they allow themselves then to feel inferior for the rest of their life. They feel so regretful about what they once did. That is not the purpose of guilt. It's to make sure you clean up your act. It's to make sure that you don't violate this again. It's that you make things right when you screw up. That's what you got to do. Now, sometimes you can't. Sometimes someone's passed away, or something's occurred where you feel guilty about something happened in the past you really can't change. The only thing you can change is your present and future behaviors. When you do that, you can let go of the guilt. That's the message it offers you. And again, when you immediately feel the signal, what do? You identify the signal, you realize, hey, I'm feeling regret, I'm feeling guilt. Secondly, you appreciate the message. It's a message that says you need to change something. Either your perception or your procedures. Maybe you're feeling guilty about something you shouldn't feel guilty about at all. Have you ever done that? I know I have. I felt guilty one time because I didn't help somebody feel happy enough. I used to run around. If everybody around me wasn't happy, I feel guilty if I felt good. How stupid. We don't want to fall into that category. You might want to change your rules or your perceptions. Or you might maybe change your procedures again. Maybe the procedure is you feel guilty about the way you communicate with somebody. You were too harsh. Go back and clean it up. Say, hey, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do this. I really regret what I said. I was wrong. Boy, the guilt will disappear. or change your behavior in the future. Change the way you're going to communicate to that person or people like them. Any one of these three changes, again, will immediately eliminate the guilt, and the guilt has served a good purpose, hasn't it? It's kept you on track, it's moved you forward, it's made you a better person. That's why it's there. Utilize it, don't wallow in it. Let's go to category number 8, inadequacy. Boy, if you feel inadequate, those are any of those emotions, again, that make you feel like you're less than. Feelings of being unworthy, for example, or being inadequate feelings. Whenever you feel this emotion, or emotion like it, get excited. Appreciate it. It's offering you a message, and the message is simple. It's saying you need to do something to get better in this category right away. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect at it. Inadequacy just says you got to do something. Don't sit on yourself anymore. You're feeling inadequate because you haven't done anything to be really good in this area. Now, the first thing you got to do is, as you go through this process, is ask yourself, is this really an appropriate emotion? That is, am I really inadequate, or do I need to change the way I'm perceiving things? Maybe I got some rules that say, in order for me to be adequate, I have to go on the dance floor and outdo John Travolta. That's probably inappropriate perceptions. You need to change the perceptions, or maybe changing the procedures, which is, I need to prepare myself by doing something right now to get better. One thing you can do is just go practice. One thing you can do is go out and initiate some communication. So inadequacy is a message to get up and do something to become better, or to change your criteria, to look at what you're doing and make it easier for yourself to feel adequate. You probably got rules that are too harsh. Now, category number 9. This is one of the categories that I think immobilizes and destroys more people's lives than virtually any of the others combined. And that is a feeling of being overloaded, or overwhelmed, or hopeless, or depressed. They all fit together. I use overloaded to make it sound simpler. So you say, gosh, I'm depressed, you'll immediately feel much more intensity than if you say I'm overloaded. The key here is to realize that this is a signal. When you feel hopeless, depressed, overwhelmed, or overloaded, the message that's offering you is you need to reevaluate what's most important to you in this situation. Sit down right now and decide what is absolutely important, what's a necessity for you versus what's a desire. Write down all the things that are most important for you to accomplish. Then, 2, put them in order of priority. And then 3, take the first one on your list and do something about it. It's the same thing with depression, the same thing for being hopeless. Sit down and say, okay, instead of saying it's hopeless, I need to change my state, number 1. That's always the message of all these emotions. Number 2, I got to clarify what's most important to me. Write it all out. 3, what's the order of the importance? And 4, what's the first thing on my list? Let me go handle that. The minute you go handle anything, and you deal with one simple issue, your brain can handle it. And as soon as you handle that situation, you will feel like you're in control of your world. You will not feel overloaded. You will not feel overwhelmed. You will feel like there's hope, and you won't feel depressed. Your self-esteem grows when you do something to take control of events, instead of having events take control of you. And all you have to do to take control of events is chunk them down. Pick one thing and master it. Go to number 2 and master it. The message is simple. You're trying to do too much in too short a period of time. You're looking at the whole world and expecting everything to be perfect overnight, and you're feeling like you can't handle it all. Chunk it down. Here's the final category. Category 10, feeling lonely. Have you ever felt really lonely? Gosh, I don't think there's anybody alive who hasn't. But what does it mean when you feel lonely? What is the message that you should get from that signal? I think the message is really simple. What we really need at that moment, the message is telling us we need a certain connection with people. The challenge with that message is a lot of times people take the word connection, or the idea of the need for a connection with another human being, and they make it into a sexual connection, or instant intimacy. And they feel frustrated because even when they have that, they still feel lonely. What we really need to do is identify what kind of connection. Maybe you do need an intimate connection. Maybe you just need some basic friendship, or someone to listen to, or somebody to laugh with, or someone to talk to. It's really important when we feel lonely to just say, hey, this is really neat. What's great about being lonely is it says I really care about people. I love to be with people. And then you find out in what way I want to be with somebody right now. And then take an action immediately to go in the direction we want. In other words, all 10 of these emotions are a message to our brain to say, hey, what you're doing right now isn't working, and you need to change it. Either change your perception, change what criteria you're using, your way of looking at things that makes you feel this way, because your perception is not appropriate, or change the way you're communicating. You're not communicating things in a way where people know your needs, or just change your behavior. What you're doing isn't working. Change your approach. So whether it be fear, where you're saying, hey, what you're doing is you're not prepared enough, get more prepared, or change your perception. You are prepared, you're just make it a criteria for yourself. You have to have too much to feel prepared. You're feeling fearful because your criteria are too intense, your rules are too hard to meet. Change it and look at it and see that you really are prepared. Or it'll be something like regret, where again your brain is saying, hey, something you did isn't working, you broke your own rules in a way that doesn't work for you. Either you really didn't break your rules, your perception is unfair, or you broke your rules and you need to change it. You need to do something so that you will never again break these rules. You'll never again go through this kind of pain because it's not appropriate. That's in essence how we want to deal with these 10 emotions. And what you want to do is get to know these 10, review them over and over again so that when, hey, you have an emotion, and you say, my gosh, I'm feeling jealous. First step, identify the signal. Which of these 10 categories does it fall into? Well, gosh, jealous, what is that? Do I feel angry feelings or am I feeling fearful feelings about jealousy? You might say, well, I'm really feeling angry. Well, then there's a standard that I have that's been violated. First step, do I need to change my perception or my procedures? As I respect the emotion, what is the meaning I should take from this? What's the message? Well, maybe, the fact that they said hello to this other person, maybe I need to change my perception. Maybe that's not so bad. Maybe I shouldn't feel jealous about that. Maybe that's an unfair rule, an unfair way of looking at things. Or maybe I need to communicate my needs. That it wasn't just a conversation, it's giving that person a kiss like that doesn't meet my rules. And I need to communicate that to that person so they know, so that they can respect my values, so they can respect what my needs are. Or maybe I can change my behavior, and when I start to feel jealous, instead I can just go and share more intimate feelings, more loving feelings to this person I was jealous of. Maybe it'll change the whole quality of the relationship right then and there. So now that we understand the messages, the 10 messages, and again, I know you need to review this. Let's take a look at the 6 steps. I give you the first 2, and I repeat them over and over again so that you'll remember them. What's step 1? You feel an emotion. I don't care what it is. Let's say you say, I feel destroyed. Number 1, immediately identify the signal. What is destroyed? Is that uncomfortable? No, it's more than that. Is it fear? No. Is it hurt? Yeah, it feels really hurt. That's what it is. So you identify what it is. 2, appreciate the message. Saying I gotta change something. Okay, do I need to change my perception? Or do I need to change my communication of my needs? Or do I need to behave differently? What do I need to do there? And what's the specific message? What is the specific message that hurt offers me? Hey, there's an expectation I have that's not being met, and I have a feeling of loss. Then I go to step 3 of the 6 steps, and that is, I gotta get curious. What I need to do is get curious about what do I really want to feel, and what would it take to make that happen? So here are the 4 questions you're gonna ask to get curious. You've identified the challenge, you appreciate the message, you respect the fact that your emotions are helping you. They're giving you a signal to take some kind of new action. Now you're curious. And your curiosity is, well, how do I really want to feel? Let's say you were feeling destroyed, which is really just hurt. How do you want to feel? Well, I want to feel confident, or I want to feel loved, or I want to feel connected. As soon as you identify what you want to feel, you're moving in the direction you want to go. All these emotions are telling you is you need to refocus on what you want, take some new action. So ask yourself, what do you want? How do I want to feel? Second question you want to ask from a curious state of mind is, what would I have to believe in order to feel this way right now? So you might say, what I want to feel is close friendship instead of pain. And so the next question you ask is, what would I have to believe in order to feel that way? Well, I have to believe that nothing could ever violate my sense of friendship with this person, that they really do care about me, that feeling is really there. Third question, what am I willing to do to handle this right now so I can feel this way? Well, I'm willing to believe that. I'm willing to trust. I'm willing to have that faith. I'm willing to communicate to that person that I love them no matter what. I'm willing to ask them, what does it take for us to really have a friendship here and not to be in a position where I feel destroyed by the way somebody communicates? Now the 4th question is, what's great about this, or what can I learn from this? You might want to ask yourself, well, one of the things I learned is that I contributed to these feelings by my rules, by the way I looked at things, or by my intensity. So what can I learn from this so in the future I never have to go through these feelings again? Again, if you get curious about your emotions, and what created them, and what you can learn from them, and how you can make sure you don't have to go through the pain again, then sure enough, you can accelerate your growth in life, experience a lot more pleasure and a lot less pain. Step 4, you get confident. How do you get confident? You reassure yourself that you can handle these emotions right now by remembering times when you've handled them in the past. Are you following me on this? Have you ever felt jealous before, and then you got over it? Can you remember a specific time? Or have you ever felt destroyed, really hurt, but you got over it? Go back and remember a specific time when you really felt hurt and somehow you got over it. You didn't think you could, but maybe you communicated with the person, or maybe you changed your state, or you asked yourself a good question like, what else could this mean? Maybe this person isn't trying to destroy me, they're not trying to hurt me, maybe they're just stressed out, maybe it's not even about me. Maybe people are doing the best they can with the resources they have. Remember a time when you're able to deal with the emotion and that'll make you confident you can deal with it right now. Step 5, get certain. And what I mean by that is, to be certain you can handle this, stop right now in your mind and imagine coming up with different ways of handling this emotion. Come up with 3 or 4 different ways where that jealousy comes up and you communicate it to somebody else in a way where they're hearing you. And if one doesn't work, you try another one. You rehearse it in your mind several times. When you see yourself, okay, one time expressing it by saying, I know I'm wrong and I have this misperception. Another time you say it with a smile and say, I'm a little crazy at times. This is how I felt here. Another time you do it by giving the person a hug and whispering, I need your help. So you look at many different ways of communicating something so you deal with the emotion and you rehearse it. So pretty soon you feel confident. Gosh, I got lots of ways of expressing my emotion in a way that empowers me in my relationships rather than disempowers me. And finally, step 6, get excited and take action. Do something right away that reinforces that you can handle this emotion. Go make that communication to the person you need to so you don't stay stuck in the emotion. Go express your emotion in some way that reinforces that what you've rehearsed inside your mind and what you got curious about, the new distinctions you made, really do work for you. That really you can change the way you feel and you're doing it right now. 6 simple steps, 10 emotions that you can recognize. Now, how do you get good at anything? The answer's pretty simple. Practice. I hate that word practice though. I'd rather say do it, because practice implies maybe you're not very good at it. The way you get good at something is you do it. And every time you do it, you're trying to do it even better. You don't ever practice. You're always going for it full out, having fun with it as well. And the best way to deal with emotion is, remember, is kill the monster while it's little. Make sure you deal with those anger emotions when they're at the level of a little bit irritated, not when they're enraged. If you handle them at the level of a little irritation, they're a lot easier to deal with. Also, remember the tools you've already learned. You start to feel like you're enraged, connect yourself and say, well, maybe I'm not enraged, maybe I'm a little annoyed, or I'm a little bit inconvenienced by this conversation. That'll break your pattern and make it easier for you to hear the message of those emotions and take new actions instead of being caught up in those emotions and surrendering to them or being defeated by them. The emotion's there to serve you, but you've got to hear the message and act upon it. And by the way, the very best way to get what you want is to focus on it. That is to experience it, to plant it. Think of your mind, your emotions, and spirit as the ultimate garden. The way to make sure that you harvest what you want out of that garden is not to keep practicing planting disappointment seeds and fear seeds and saying, well, I'm really good at taking those things out and learning from them and showing what I've got to change, but instead to plant seeds like love and warmth or appreciation. In fact, let me offer you 10 quick emotions that if you plant them every day and you cultivate these emotions, you focus on these being the way you want to feel every day. You hold yourself to a standard that says, every day I want to feel these 10 emotions. What you've done is planted the seeds of greatness. You have planted the seeds that create a tremendous, juicy life. A life where you don't need a lot of action signals because you're already acting. You're already living life at its fullest. See, a weed in your garden is a call to action. It's not negative, it's a call to action. It says, you got to do something. You got to pull this out. And that way things can grow. Well, one of the easiest ways to keep the weeds out is to keep cultivating the kinds of plants you want right there in the garden so that their roots are bigger and deeper and stronger. There's not much room for weeds. Here are the 10 emotions that add juice to life, and you want to cultivate it. Number 1 is love and warmth. Listen, if you want to create a behavior, I don't care what the behavior is, the best way to get yourself to do something is put yourself in an emotional state where that behavior is automatic. Let me give you an example. If you want to have close relationships and do the things that make you close to other people, the easiest way to do that is to cultivate an emotion of being loving and warm. If you put yourself in a loving and warm state, you don't have to think, well, what should I do to make my relationship work? It just happens automatically. The second set of emotions is to be appreciative and grateful. That also builds relationships. If you're always feeling loving and warm and appreciative and grateful, then you're going to do whatever's necessary. You're not going to even think about it. You're going to do more than is necessary to nurture the people around you, and you'll have that deep feeling of caring. Third emotion is curiosity. Gosh, if you really want to grow in your life, learn to be curious like a child. Children know how to wonder, and that's why they're so darn happy. That's why they're never bored. See, you want to cure boredom, be curious. And if you want to get yourself, let's say, to study more, when you're in school, when you're trying to push yourself to study, that's a hard behavior to create. But if you're curious, studying's automatic, isn't it? You don't have to work at it. Cultivate the emotion of curiosity, and life becomes an unending study of joy. 4, Get excited and passionate every day. See, excitement and passion add juice to anything. I think it was Benjamin Disraeli who said, man is truly only great when he acts from his passions. Passion adds to life enjoyment. It can turn anything that seems to be a challenge into a tremendous opportunity. We want to make sure we add that passion and excitement each day, and the way we do that, the way we have the love, the warmth, the appreciation, the gratefulness, the curiosity, the excitement, the passion, guess how we get that? We decide to feel it. See, I teach people in my Daily Destiny to create what I call a code of conduct. It's a set of emotional states that you put in front of you, and you say that every single day you are committed to live those emotions, even if things don't go well, even if it rains on your parade, even if all your expectations are not met. You choose to feel this way anyway, because cultivating these emotions makes life work. And out of these emotions, it causes you to do the things that make life for you successful in every sense of the word. Mental, emotional, social, spiritual, intellectual, physical, financial, every sense of what success can mean for all of us. So we want to cultivate each of these emotions. Fifth major emotion to cultivate, determination. Hey, you want to go on a diet? You want to get yourself to follow through? It's really hard to do, isn't it? Most people fail because they try to push themselves to go on a diet rather than putting themselves in a state of determination. See, if you're determined, now a diet is easy because you're in an emotional state where the appropriate behaviors happen automatically. The sixth powerful seed to plant to make your garden grow with joy and passion and energy, flexibility. Boy, if there's a seed to plant that will guarantee success, is the ability to change what's going on. All those action signals, all those things you should call negative emotions, are just a call to be more flexible. Be more flexible in the way you evaluate things, your perception of what things really mean. Be more flexible in the way you communicate. Be more flexible in your behavior, and your whole world changes. The seventh major emotion, confidence. When you're confident, you're willing to try things. You're willing to put yourself on the edge. You're willing to really experience that one emotion that every single religious book on the planet talks about, faith. Now, one way to get confidence, one way to develop faith, is to use the muscle more often, to practice it, to exercise it. I often ask people, are you confident in tying your shoes? People say, well, of course. I say, how confident? They say, absolutely confident. I say, how come? They say, well, because I've done it a few billion times. Well, if you want to have confidence, the best way to have it is exercise it every day, utilize it, have some faith, have some trust, choose to be confident in a situation, and you'll discover that you're going to do well. For example, most people are fearful about things that they think someday may happen, and they feel bad about it in advance. How many things you used to be fearful about never came about? Just think if those times you've chosen to be confident, you would have reinforced that confidence is the way to live. Choose confidence over fear. 8, be cheerful. Gosh, I added to my values list cheerfulness not long ago, and when I did, people around me commented, God, there's something about you. You seem so happy. I thought I was always happy. But you know what? There's a difference between being happy on the inside and being cheerful. Being cheerful means that when you're happy, you tell your face about it. Everything works together. And when you're communicating with people and you're feeling happy on the inside, they feel happy being around you. It means that you're trying to be happy in a way that not only makes you feel happy, but the people around you as well. And cultivating that emotion enhances your self-esteem, makes life more fun, causes people to respond to you in a way where you need a lot less of this stuff like fear and hurt and anger and frustration, disappointment, overload, depression and guilt and feelings of inadequacy. All seem to disappear in an environment that's cheerful. Cultivate this emotion, you won't need so many of those action signals to get your attention. Here's number 9, feeling healthy. Gosh, feeling physically vibrant and healthy is a great way to make sure that anything else bounces off you. Have you ever noticed how you got tons of energy, you feel alive, you feel vital? The challenges, even the challenges that used to really destroy you, you seem to handle so much better, so much easier. It's like those action signals aren't really necessary when you feel vibrant and alive. Cultivate the feelings of being healthy and practice the things you know will make you feel physically vibrant on an ongoing basis. And finally, the 10th seed to plant, maybe one of the most important ones of all, is a sense of contribution. If every day you can feel like what you do adds something, more than just to your own life, but to others as well, then life takes on a new, deeper sense of meaning. I think we all have a need to feel like our life matters, like because we lived, other people's lives were better, they were greater, they were more enjoyable. We all want to leave our mark. And each day we can do that in little ways. We can do it by the way we smile at somebody we don't even know, or by giving a compliment, or just by appreciating someone who really needs to be appreciated. So often people get angry because they don't feel appreciated. Maybe the next time you start to feel angry, just realize that you got a standard there that says, if I do this, people have to respond to me. Maybe that's inappropriate. Maybe from now on, you learn to make yourself feel good. You learn to appreciate yourself, or you learn to communicate to people and say, you know, I'm not feeling very appreciated. I love a few strokes here or there. And you know what? You give yourself that anger on a heartbeat. You've taken on a new task, a new direction. But in your own life, why not every day just focus on how you contribute, how you already have contributed? Notice the little things you do to support other people. They'll make you feel good about yourself, and it'll make you want to do even more. And the more we contribute, the more addicted we get to giving more to other people. And if everybody in life got addicted to this feeling of contribution, imagine what the world would be like. So those are the 10 C's. Love and warmth, appreciation and gratitude, curiosity, excitement and passion, determination, flexibility, confidence, cheerfulness, health, and a sense of contribution. Plant these emotions daily and watch your whole life grow with a vitality like you never dreamed of. Well, I've done a lot of your brain for emotions. I think this is a tape you'll probably want to listen to a couple of times to really get good at using these action signals as well as planning the positive ones. Remember the 6 steps. Identify the signal. This feeling I'm having right now, which of these 10 categories does it fit into? 2, appreciate the message. Respect it. Don't make the feeling wrong. Just immediately look at it and say, okay, this is a message and you change something. Number 1, maybe I change the word I'm using. Maybe instead of being devastated, I'm a little concerned. Or maybe I need to change my perception or my rules about this. Maybe it's inappropriate to feel this way. Or maybe I need to change my procedures. In order to get this emotion, I need to communicate more effectively. Tell me, this is really what I need. I want to meet your needs too. Can you help me out with this? Or maybe I need to behave differently. Maybe I need to just treat people differently and they'll treat me differently. And I won't feel this hurt or this anger or this depression or this upset. Or maybe I need to be more flexible in my behavior and then I won't feel like I'm stuck anymore. I won't feel so frustrated. Again, I've got a lot of choices. 3rd, get curious. Get curious about what you really want. Ask yourself, what do I really want in this situation first? 2nd, what would I have to believe in order to feel up there right now? Maybe you already believe and start feeling that instantly. 3rdly, what am I going to do to make it the way I want it? And 4thly, what can I learn from this? What's great about this? And did I contribute to this? And how can I make it better so I don't have to experience it in the future? How nice to be able to move on. 4thly, get confident. Remember times when I dealt with this. Remember some specific times you dealt with this emotion and you handled it. You turned it around. We all need a little hope. And one of the best places of hope is when we handle it in the past. Hey, I've done the past, I probably handle it in the future. I probably handle it right now. And then get certain, number 5. Get certain, because you're not just confident about the past, but rehearse in your mind. Imagine dealing with it coming up in the future. Situations where it would come up and now you handle it easily. The best way to get good at something is practice it. And there's a good thing to remember. Our brain can't tell the difference between something we vividly imagine and something we actually experience. So if we imagine dealing with it enough times, we'll start to feel absolutely certain we can deal with the future, and we will. That mental program will be in place. And finally, get excited and take action. Go out immediately and use your new feeling and take some kind of action that supports you and expanding your sense of freedom, your sense of love, your sense of appreciation, gratitude, curiosity, or whatever emotions you want to feel more of. And finally, I'd say this to you. If you remember nothing else from this tape, but this one thing, it's probably the most important thing to remember about emotions. Every feeling you have, good or bad, is not based on the actual reality of life, but rather your interpretation as to what things mean. And remember, nothing in life has any meaning except the meaning you give it. So if you don't like the way you're feeling, change the meaning. And the way to do that is ask one question. And again, if you remember nothing else from this tape, remember this right now. Whenever you start to feel bad, ask yourself this question: what else could this mean? You start to feel like somebody's hurt you. What else could this mean? Maybe they didn't mean to hurt you. Maybe what this means is that they're just frustrated in their own life. They're just confused. They don't know what's going on. They're scared. I wonder what's going on with them. It makes them treat people this way. What else could this mean? Whenever we get absolutely certain we know exactly what things mean, we tend to create some pain for ourselves. So if you start to feel like you're in pain, what else could this mean? Maybe what this means is I need to be more flexible. Maybe this means I'm about to learn something. Maybe the fact that I'm frustrated means I'm about to have a breakthrough. Maybe the fact that right now I feel a little overwhelmed is because I'm about to grow and expand. And when I don't know how to deal with this, I'll be able to deal with almost anything. What else could this mean? See, you and I at any moment can choose a new meaning and therefore choose a new way of feeling, a new way of behaving. And you know what? We're never going to know the absolute meaning of anything. When somebody passes away, you really cared about them when they died. You can feel really bad, you can feel disappointed, you can feel frustrated, you can feel angry, you can feel hurt, you can feel sad. And all those are appropriate emotions. But make sure you take a message from it. And the message you gotta eventually come out with is, what's an empowering way of looking at this? What else could this mean? Maybe it doesn't mean that I just lost somebody. Maybe it means this person has gone someplace they need to be. Or maybe this means my connection will be even stronger with them now than when they were here. Maybe this means I will value my own life and give more while I'm here because I realize that life is delicate. Choose meanings that empower you in life instead of assuming that meanings that disempower you. It's a final message to remember. Now, let's use these 6 steps and these 10 emotions. Over the next 2 days, just concentrate directly on any feeling that comes up that feels disempowering, that feels negative, and immediately as it comes up, identify it, recognize that it's valuable, that it's giving you input, you need to change something, find out if you should change what it means to you, or if you should change your procedures, your communication, or your behavior. Immediately then get curious. Hey, how do I really want to feel? What do I have to believe in order for me to feel that way now? What am I willing to do to make it the way I want it? And what can I learn from this? Then immediately remember times when you've handled it before, get yourself confident, get certain by rehearsing dealing with that situation in the future, and then go use it. Go do it right away. I want you to do that for the next 2 days deliberately. Then just carry your list around. And whenever it seems appropriate, over the next month, just glance at it when you're having an emotion, when you're having a feeling that doesn't feel good, and let yourself through the process. But do it deliberately and consciously for the next 2 days so you develop a habit in your head. Second assignment, make a list of all things you can do to make yourself feel good. Now, do you understand what I'm saying here? Just a list of anything you can do at any moment in time that makes you feel good. Because I think most of us have never sat down and said, gosh, how many different ways do I have to feel good? Most of us only have a few ways consciously to do it. Smoke, drink, eat, make love might be a positive one, exercise, maybe watch TV or a movie. But maybe you want to expand your list. I did this recently for myself, and it was fantastic. I came up with 62 things that I can do to make myself feel good at any moment in time, no matter where I am. It was pretty darn exciting. I never realized I had that level of choice. And once I brought it to my conscious awareness, I had that list, and I feel like, wow, there's so many ways to feel good. I can do it any moment, no matter what's happening around me. And by having that many choices, I could throw out some of the old ones, like eating as a way to feel good. Maybe eating just becomes fuel then, because you've got so many other better ways to feel good. I just realized how powerful music is for me in terms of changing my state. I was in the car and I have a stacking CD disc player. And in there I have classical music, and I have pop music and rock music. I mean, I go from listening to Aida and Bocelli to Blink-182 or Lenny Kravitz. Or all the ranges of emotions that can change in a moment or two. I can go from being excited and ready to exercise to just being deep in emotion. All that within a few moments using music. And you know what? There's no negative side effects. Except maybe the volume I use every now and then, but other than that, it's not there. So what are all the ways you can make yourself feel good that have no negative side effects? Make a list and then put them in order what you'd be willing to use in any environment. And for example, taking the right kind of breath to just change the way I feel is a fantastic gift I can give myself, and I can do it anywhere, anytime, anyhow, even if there's not music around. So make a list for yourself. It'll expand your world, it'll expand your emotional choices and how to trigger yourself. Thirdly, look at these 10 emotions that you used to think of as disempowering. You keep calling them action signals. But the truth is, if you could avoid them altogether, and you didn't need them to give you action signals, you're already acting, that would be the preference, wouldn't it? Or if you never got to the deepest part of those emotions. In other words, if you felt mildly annoyed instead of absolutely frustrated, that certainly would be your advantage. So you might want to develop a belief, a singular global belief that really helps you not have to feel these feelings very often at all. I'll give you an example. I've done this for a lot of these feelings for me. If you look at an emotion like, for example, feeling lonely, a lot of people are afraid of being lonely, or they're afraid of being abandoned. Now, I've always told people, I'm never afraid of being abandoned. You could never abandon me because I just follow you. I'm going to go after you. So I have a belief that no one can abandon me because if I really care about somebody, I can always make that relationship work. Or another one might be if a person is feeling like they're depressed or overwhelmed, a belief that I have is this too shall pass. And that the best is yet to come. See, if you adopted that belief and you started to feel certain that the best is always yet to come, think how that might change your life. It might not only wipe out feelings of hopelessness or depression or overwhelm, but it also may cultivate that feeling of excitement and passion for life, maybe more of that gratitude as well. And a final one, many of you are familiar with that I offer, If you really start to feel disappointed, just remind yourself, hey, there's always a way. If you're committed, you can still turn this thing around if you adjust your approach. Maybe an antidote to feeling angry towards someone or hurt by them would be to remember that people always do the best they can with the resources they have. And lastly, just remember, nothing in life has any meaning except the meaning you give it. If you don't like the way you feel, choose to create a new meaning. Have fun with your emotions. Play with them. Learn from the ones that used to be painful. And choose to live and enjoy and experience the ones that create you tremendous pleasure. And by the way, our next session is on finances, on money. And money is driven by our emotions. I mean, how you feel determines what you spend or don't spend, what you save, what you give up. It's still an emotional device. That's why we want to cover our emotions first. So until tomorrow, my friends, smile big, enjoy your life, convert pain into pleasure, and most of all, live with passion. First, quick reminder in case you didn't take the day off. Here's what we've learned so far. 7